The story begins with loud explosions from a building that had been shattered, each small piece of the building scattered to all the places. A fire was scattered throughout the place when it showed the man holding his sword, which had a fire as he ran. He quickly launched his attack and screamed the meteor smash. Due to his swayed sword, the place became chaotic, buildings were falling, and some had already caught fire and were continuously burned. When a man launched his attack, he was confused because his sword was stopped and wondered what had happened. At that particular moment, the guy who stopped his attack appeared with his green sword, asked him whether he had got it, and stated the name of Hyuntae Kim. The tension between the two arose. Hyuntae gritted his teeth as he clenched his jaw. His sweat already covered Hyuntae's face, showing that the other guy's provocation provoked him. A man with a green sword said that if that's all Hyuntae got, he claimed it was his turn to attack. His eyes were focused on Hyuntae, and then he started swaying it and slashing the body of Hyuntae. After he finished, his face and eyes were seen to remain emotionless. This is the story of the strongest hero expelled from the party. On a particular day, countless plants and animals on Earth turned into monsters, and invaders from another world attacked some creatures that had the power to destroy things on Earth. The world right now is truly in chaos, continuously bombing and destroying buildings. Those events resulted in massive destruction of the Earth. A helpless man was stranded, longing to be saved from the monster who was about to attack him. The animal monster started growling and was ready to devour a helpless man. However, the monster has suddenly received an attack from an unknown hero. Humanity created a group of heroes with special powers. A group of people with different auras from one another appeared from the moment that they needed them. These people were called guild. On the other hand, a huge monster appeared and started howling. It was the field boss goat, Taurus. It started to sway his equipment to the group of heroes and plunged it into them. The monster's attack was somehow stopped by a man who whined and cursed about the monster's strength. The man was from Kiro's guild, a tanker named Hwang Junho. His shield was still stopping the attack of Goat Taurus. Both were strong, and it seemed like their clash wasn't stopping. However, Hwang Junho concluded that the Goat Taurus was unstoppable. On the other side of the war, a man wearing glass was seen in the field as his opponents were cornering him. His name was Jihan, and he was known as a supporter of the Kiro's guild. Jihan started to order his allies to start at that moment, which made the girl shout back, saying she knew. A girl appeared with her two hands on her sword and faced the back of the monster. The monster seems to sense the girl's presence and starts to growl. Burning, the girl started to scream behind the monster. Thunder. As she screamed the thunder, the power of her sword started to scatter, mainly aimed at the monster. The power of her sword was powerful. The monster was screaming as it felt the power of thunder directly at its whole body. Her power caused a loud thud and made the place surrounded by small pieces scattered. After the girls launched her attack, she landed on the ground and asked the Goat Taurus about her shocking attack. The girl who made a burning thunder was Seon, the mage of the Kiro's guild. Seon continued that even after being hit by Hermana's concentrated attack, burning thunder, she stopped after she heard the Goat Taurus howling. She was surprised because the monster stood up and froze at the moment since the monster was about to slice her. Luckily, Jihan was there and quickly saved Seon by leaning forward his body at the girl and deflecting the monster's attack. When the girl regains back from the surprise attack of the monster, she looked at him and called Jihan's name since the guy focused on the possible follow-up attack of the monster. To withstand that direct hit, a cyan man appeared and continued with it. They have bought some time with that. A girl with a yellow aura appeared on the scene, and she was the main dealer of Kiro's guild named Lemia. Lemia suddenly sprinted to attack the Goat Taurus, her attack known as the Rapid Slash. Her knife cuts and slices the different parts of the monster's body. Goat Taurus fell on his knees as it felt that pain made by Lemia. The monster started growling and was about to attack the girl. Mia knew the presence of Goat Taurus, and she just pointed her hand above. Hyuntae's back appeared with fire on his sword, and he attacked the monster from above in his move, known as a meteor smash. His attack was powerful enough, his sword of fire blew out all over the place, making the Goat Taurus. It became part of the Kiro's guild, Hyuntae, after they defeated the Goat Taurus and said that the dungeon was no problem either, always maintaining the top rank in the party. Hyuntae uttered that the clearing of the boss was complete. Jihan watches his allies chit-chat with one another after they have completed eliminating the boss, the Goat Taurus. Jihan is one of the founding members who started the Kim Hyuntae party. He was also happy with their team's accomplishments, but it was not until that day that the place was calm. The Keroz Guild, the two members Hyuntae, the leader, and Jihan, the supporter. Hyuntae started to call the name of Jihan as he crouched on his seat and uttered that Jihan was expelled from his party. Jihan was shocked about the Keroz leader's decision and asked again. The rain started dripping as if it was like sympathizing with Jihan. He started walking through the rain, holding his bag and phone to look at his bank statements. Jihan was disappointed because he slaved away for 7 years like a dog, and the reward was just 10 million won. As he was dazed, he remembered the words that his ex-members told him. Yoonho questioned what he had done throughout the time, and Si-yeon mocked his skills and compared him to a recruit, saying that they could do what Jihan did with a bit of training. Lee-mia implies that Jihan was weak. Much worse was their leader, who uttered that Jihan was no longer useful to their party and fired him. After he remembered all the painful words that he received, Jihan looked at the sky, embraced the rain, and questioned his reason for staying in Keroz. The story of hero Jihan ends so abruptly. The rain was continuously pouring, and thunder could be heard as if it was like talking to Jihan, who said that he must think again. Jihan was surprised and seemed to be monitoring imaginary grid lines. He reminisced about the time he spent in Keroz Guild. A sampling popped into his mind. He was rummaging through his thoughts and realized that his unique skills trigger randomly in certain situations. After being expelled from Keroz Guild, he spent a week looking for a new guild at home. He faced his desktop throughout the time until he found the Cool, Fun Guild. Jihan was startled and thought about the possible event if he joined the Cool Fun Guild. The chance of Cool Fun becoming a giant guild was 99%. He remained focused and started calculating the chances. He saw the calculated probabilities on his ability. He remembered the faces of the Keroz Guild members and promised himself that he would surely succeed more than his past guild. On the other hand, a shelf full of books, a couch, and a table full of cups of noodles appeared. A sigh can be heard from the woman facing his desktop. She said that the power went out just as she poured water into her instant noodles. Upon looking at her blacked-out desktop, Jihan suddenly opened the door. She was shocked by the loud thud from the door and asked whoever it was. Jihan was sweating a lot and panting. He just uttered the Cool Fun and was there to join the Cool Fun Guild. The woman was startled and mumbled about guild membership. While she was still dazed, Jihan fell directly to the floor, and it seemed he lost consciousness. The woman panicked, questioned what had just happened, and tried to wake Jihan. After that event, Jihan awakes, sits, and wonders what happened. As he scanned the place, the woman came and asked if he was conscious and continued explaining what had just happened to the latter. She made coffee, said that Jihan passed out for about an hour, and stated the latter's name. The woman was named Kim Si-hoo, a master of the Cool Fun Guild. Jihan massages his head and asks Si-hoo about knowing Jihan's name. Si-hoo found and showed his Keroz ID. She started wondering and questioned the latter. He was from Keroz, and why would someone from such a large corporation want to join a Cool, Fun Guild? The latter bowed, stood up, and said he would explain everything to Si-hoo. As the latter explained, Si-hoo placed both hands on his chest and said that she understood the situation. Yet the latter experienced it and could easily join another major guild. He doesn't get why the latter wanted to join Cool Fun. Jihan hesitates to answer and thinks about whether they would believe him if he told them the truth about his mysterious ability. Si-hoo noticed the hesitation in answering the latter, and she kindly said there must be a reason why she couldn't tell. She encouraged the latter by telling his own story. She removed his headphones and said she was born between a human and an elf. She called himself a half-elf, which made the latter utter the same word. He was shocked at what he discovered from Si-hoo. As Si-hoo reminisced, the incidence of invasion from another world to Earth increased. The existence of different races became public knowledge, and one of the most prominent races was elves. He continued to explain that he had the blood of the elves who massacred humans. He then asked Jihan if he wanted to join the Cool Fun Guild. After Si-hoo asked those questions, they were looking at one another, gazing. Both of them were not willing to look away. However, Jihan noticed the shaky hands of Si-hoo and said that for someone trying to scare him, her hands were shaking too much. Jihan said that he doesn't have a prejudice against elves, he has seen them, and they are no different from humans. He smiled and continued that discriminating against someone because of their race is something only trash would do. Si-hoo was surprised by what the latter stated, which made her have touche emotions and teary-eyed. The woman thanked the latter for the conversation she had on that day. She assured the latter that they would review Jihan's application positively and get back to him. After they expressed their gratitude to one another, a seemingly diamond lights all of a sudden. They are both startled, and Si-hoo thinks about the sudden activation of the florin. The seemingly diamond-like was moving on its own. She thought about the spirit sylph since it had been asleep for 12 years and why it moved at that moment. The spirit sylph went to the head of Jihan. The latter was dumbfounded and asked what it was. As she was about to reach the spirit sylph, Sihu screamed no and tried to stop the spirit. However, it was too late for her. The spirit sylph was scattered and could be seen outside due to the light released from the sylph. It reached the sky, and inside the headquarters, Sihu was on the floor and was surprised about the outcome of sylph in contact with the latter. Yu Jihan, on the other hand, was confused as he scanned his hand. The hero, Yu Jihan, was expelled from the party. He became one of only 20 in the world with a scarce class. As the latter closed his fists, he became the spirit summoner. After Jihan had contact with the spirit sylph, there were heroes of that kind, those who may contact special beings and use their powers, known as a super rare class, elementalist. These elementalists are active worldwide, including a long-haired guy named Luca Harrison, the elementalist of mist, Malosi Soifua, the elementalist of the sea, Abu Bakar, the elementalist of sand. Each of them will have the power equivalent to that of a guild. They are known as extraordinary beings. On that day, the events that happened to Jihan made him a new extraordinary being, and he was born. He was named as the elementalist of the wind. After the incident at Honey Jam, both of them were already settled. Sihu can be seen as already seated while the latter stood up and asked if he heard it right that he had made a contract with the spirit. Sihu closed his legs, held his coffee, and said it was right. She explained about the sylph, which is the spirit of the wind, that the spirit was contracted to his late mother. Jihan panicked and said that if that's the case, then he should return it to Sihu, and he suggested canceling the contract. However, Siho, who was drinking her coffee, said that it was already too late since once a spirit chooses a master, it does not change easily. He stated that it could be cancelled if the contractor died, which made the latter swallow his saliva and intently look at Sihu and ask what he should do. Sihu retorted to what the latter meant to say. She explained that Jihan had passed the test and asked if he planned to ghost the guild. The woman stood up to level the height of Jihan. The latter answered quickly by saying no and continued to gaze at the master of the Cool Fun Guild. He firmly answered that he did not intend to join any guild besides Honey Jam. When Sihu heard the latter answer, her cheeks became red and fighting the urge not to smile. She just said that the latter had at least a good taste. He started reaching the latter hand and said he would teach Jihan how to use the spirit gradually. Jihan, on the other hand, disagreed and wanted to go straight to the test. A green light appeared on the side of the Sihu, and she was startled. Her eyes grew bigger, and she seemed to focus on one thing. As Jihan played with the spirit, he mumbled to Ma. It stands for the monster area. It refers to the specific zones where monsters appear, ranging from grade 5 to grade 1. The higher the grade, the stronger the monsters. Both of them went outside of the Honey Jam headquarters. They went to the grade 5 monster area in Bucheon. The latter was focused on the place that would be suitable for the test. As he looked at Sihu, who was looking back and forth, he asked if there was a problem since he looked uneasy. Sihu froze and looked down since it was her first time in Ma. Since Hero Academy training. The latter was shocked when he heard it came from Sihu. He then asked why he didn't say it before they went to Bucheon. Sihu was embarrassed since she was the guild master. The latter swooped it down and said he would lead the way then. The latter steps to the Ma, and Sihu follow in the same seconds. Both of them walked into the Ma. The place was severely damaged, buildings collapsed, and it looked like it had suffocating air. Jihan asked the guild master what kind of monster would appear. Sihu looked at her phone and answered by saying yes, just for a moment. A minute had passed, and she said that Keroz was the monster appearing at Bucheon. It was a huge bird with a strong beak and sharp eyes. Sihu told the latter that according to the news about 2 weeks ago, a truck transporting tricks overturned near Bucheon, causing it to happen. The latter looked fascinated and started to withdraw his sword from its bag. He side-eyed the guild master and said that it was not a bad practice opponent. He swears that, at that moment, the Bucheon was a battlefield where blood can splatter and flesh can be torn at any moment. He remembered the strategies from his previous guild and needed to be both the dealer and the tank. Sihu was flustered, and he quickly jotted his mouth. She sensed that there was something in the parking lot. Both of them became alerted as they saw the Keroz. There was a body, and the head was located on the creature's beak. It was a grade 5 monster. The Keroz noticed the two near it and suddenly looked at where they were. Both of them were frozen and scared at the same time. The latter ordered the master to support from the rear. The creature suddenly flew, and it was coming quickly. Jihan held his sword to make it as a defense. He was satisfied and smiled. As he screamed an arrow to the guild master, Sihu had already released the power of the Florin and was shocked by its capabilities. The latter was quick to dodge the power of the wind. The guildmaster aimed directly at the cockatrice and made it defeated. The grade 5 monster was burnt and toasted as it hit the power of the wind. Jihan praised the guildmaster by saying that he was pretty good. Sihu proudly uttered that she was the top graduate of the Hero Academy. However, as both of them were talking, Sihu was flustered because there were numerous monsters behind Jihan. When Jihan turned his back on the possible attack from the monster, his right eye turned green, opening his skill activation, where the grid lines appeared. There were 3 warning signs above the head of the cockatrice, warning signs above the head of the cockatrice. As the sampling continuously searched and calculated the possibilities, he said that's evade path search. The system gave him the possibility that the evasion probability is 82% if he crouches. Right, exactly. He crouched down, and cockatrice's attack was successfully dodged. He lifted his palm in the spirit and ordered it to haste. His attack made the 3 cockatrices all beheaded. All of the parts of the body were separated. The guildmaster watched everything the latter did and could not believe that Jihan was already handling the sylph well. Has it only been a day since he awakened? She thought of what kind of guy the latter was. Jihan walked near the guildmaster, and on his way, the foot of the bird was shown. A huge creature was in Buchan. At the same time, he hugged the guildmaster and asked her if she was okay. Sihu answers yes to the latter. Both of them heard the monster and became alert. Sihu asked why the monster was like that in level 5 Ma. That's when Jihan realizes that it could be a mutant. The cockatrice looks like it evolved. It became more huge than its size and has an unknown level monster. The latter activated his skill and started to calculate the probabilities, and the system notified him that their chance of winning only ranged from 12%. After thoroughly scanning, he finds a spot that might be painful for the mutant. He asked the guildmaster if she could restrain the movement of the cockatrice. Sihu was startled and said she could, but just a little bit. The latter said it would be enough and started approaching the mutant. The cockatrice was already moving to get close to the latter. It flew while Jihan was running on the road. The latter ordered him at that moment, and Sihu shot right when she heard the latter scream. Her power, known as slow wind, the purple aura, guided him, and it cornered the mutant to stop as the latter dashed. When he was about to attack, the string that made the mutant cornered was already destroyed, and it opened its beak and swallowed the latter. Jihan remembered the words he had received from Hyuntae, saying he was useless. When the mutant closed his beak, something was about to happen inside it. There were red grid lines on the face of the mutant and green light inside its beak. The latter screams his power, which is known as a wind cut. The head of the mutant was destroyed into square parts and scattered throughout the place. He then ran out after he squared the mutant. On the rooftop, someone watched all the things that they both did and was amused because, beside him, there was also another spirit master in Korea. He was the earth spirit master named Hyuntae. On the other side of the monster area, Gyeonggi-do Hwasong level 2 Ma. The places were all the same. Cars and buses were all destroyed by the fallen buildings. Bricks and dust were also scattered in all areas in Gyeonggi-do Hwasong. The air seemed suffocating. A grunting sound can be heard from the vast red monster with sharp claws. A man, Youngho from Kiro's guild, demanded the red monster to look at his side. He has 2 fist bumps and sticks to one another to activate his skills, which is the taunt. At the same time, the red monster was already aiming at Youngho. When the attack between the monster and Youngho had collided, he stopped the monster's attack. However, his power was not enough, and it started to weaken. He then yelled at him Siyeon, the mage of Kiro Guild, and said that she should hurry since he could not hold on. Siyeon was behind Youngho and answered back to the guy she knew. As her eye became yellow, she released his chain lightning power and pointed directly at the red monster. Her power embraced the whole body of the red monster and made the entire place scatter lightning. After she was done, she was satisfied and proud of the outcome and said that making a fuss over such small fries as she mocked Youngho. Youngho was provoked and retorted that he almost got caught up in it, too. Yet, the girl still answers, saying it was why she told the guy to lose weight. The guy just let it slide, and he ordered Siyeon to retreat. He was taken aback and seemed worried as he looked at something. He screamed at Siyeon to watch her back. With that, the enormous red monster was still alive, and was upper behind Siyeon. As she looked at her back, she was confused because one giant monster survived. She unconsciously said Yu Jihan and asked him to cover her up. Her eyes widened and grew more extensive when she realized the latter was not there anymore. When she was caught in the past, someone had already cut the giant red monster that made Siyeon, which was Hyuntae. They fought and clashed with the enormous red monster until all the monsters were defeated. Siyeon and Youngho leaned to the wall and used it as support for their exhausted body. Siyeon, gasping for air, said she couldn't take it anymore. While Youngho realizes that their opponent is different from their usual, he concludes that it is a mutant. The girl said she didn't know because they weren't particularly strange. They both looked at Hyuntae as he uttered that those monsters were just ordinary giant worms. He closed his fist, smashed it through the wall, and asked the two of them why they were struggling against such a monster. Youngho and Si-yeon tried to calm down their leader and justify their actions earlier. When they almost got into chaos, they looked at someone on the other side, and it was Lemia. On her way near her group, her face and some of her body had dirt and some bruises. Her eyes reddened, and she uttered that Zone Z was already cleared. After saying those things, Hyuntae, their leader, looked at her and said she should not act recklessly. He frowned to the point that his veins could be seen because there was no one to take care of her now. Lemia assured their leader that she knew that. On the other hand, Youngho stated the name of Jihan and concluded that it could be that the mess happened because he left. Hyuntae heard it screaming and said it could not be even if he were gone. It was just Jihan. He stood firmly and said they did not need someone like him back at Bucheon, where Sihu and Jihan were. When Jihan chunks the mutant, his power of spirit remains released and scattered throughout the place. Sihu, who just watched the latter fight the mutant, realized that the latter was single-handedly taking down a mutant, was amused by Jihan, and started questioning who the guy was. The latter was mesmerizing and began collecting his spirits back from its hands. A guy appeared, amazed, and asked himself whether those two had taken down the mutant. His smile widened, and he said it was such a sweet deal. Sihu dashed to the back of the ladder and asked if he was hurt in any part of his body. When the ladder fell to the ground, Sihu held and helped him, asking if he was okay. Jihan started to mumble the name of Sihu and said that she must begin farming because the mutant monsters were rare, and they would sell for a high price. Sihu was surprised as he heard it right and started to punch the ladder's abdomen while she screamed at him because she was worried, thinking something had gone wrong. The latter grunted about the action of the guild master. As they stopped, Sihu asked if it was too much to farm the chunks of the mutant since there were many. Jihan agreed with the guild master, and it was undoubtedly complex for just the two of them. As they talked, the guy wearing sneakers appeared behind them and said it looked like the two needed help. Jihan and Sihu turned their faces on their back to see who it was. The guy greeted the both of them and acknowledged their heroes. He happily introduced himself as Jang Saim from a monster disposal company. He was the representative from Mongdang. The guild master didn't know about the monster disposal company. Therefore, the latter explained to her that monster disposal companies specialized in collecting monster byproducts. However, the latter needed to be convinced and thought of why a business person was in the monster area. Saw him scratch the back of his head and told them that their company was new and they had to do those things to make ends meet. He gave a proposal to Jihan and Sihu about handling the corpse of the mutant and giving it to the disposal company at Mongdang. They look at the chunks behind their back and for the guild master. She said it was perfect timing and convinced Jihan to leave it to the disposal company. The latter didn't say anything because something felt off. As Saim was waiting, he then checked the corpse first, and he started putting his gloves on. Jihan and Sihu were watching the guy from the disposal company who thoroughly checked Jihan's cut. Saim praised the chunks because they were cleanly cut, and by that quality, it looked like they would trade at a high place. When Sihu heard it, it made her happy, and she was pleased and wanted to change the honey jam office. At the same time, Jihan was staring at her blatantly. However, the guy from the disposal company seemed to have another plan, and he answered her with his thoughts and said sure, and she could have the scraps since he already had the real deal. He was holding a purple diamond and claimed it was his real deal. The purple diamond is the magic crystal that only comes from the mutants. He also said that if he had this, then he would be rich. However, the ground shook and turned into a corner because the guy from the disposal company was cornered. His hands were captivated by the stones left and right, together with his feet. Jihan and Sihu were startled and started to wonder what just happened suddenly. Saim yelled to spare his life and said he would return the magic crystals. He began to sweat a lot. A voice can be heard stating that the business guys have sticky fingers and asking the disposal guy if stealing someone else's item was right. Sihu was confused about what happened and the voice that he heard, and seemingly she knew who that person was, a yellow aura, and stated that the magic crystal was his. The guy claiming the magic crystal was the rank 1 hero, Hyuntae, who came from the Dice Guild. She started to wonder why the rank 1 was in a place like Bucheon. The magic crystal was in Jihan's hand, and he claimed it was the right whole spoil of Kum Fun. He asked the rank if he would haul it. The rank 1 hero stated that he was supposed to handle the mutant, which was ordered from the association. He smiled at Jihan, however, the latter claimed his right to own the magic crystals and said it was the rank 1 issue, not theirs. The latter activated his skills and found it dangerous because the system saw the chance of winning was in code red, and he had a 0% chance of winning. The rank 1 was just scratching his back, and he seemed bored and said there appeared to be some misunderstanding. Jihan was surprised because of the sudden disappearance of rank 1, and before he could react, Doha was already behind him, saying that it was not a request. After the rank 1 said that, he started to grab the latter's face. At the same time, the latter needed clarification about how Doha moves quickly. His face was smashed deep down on the ground, and the rocks overflowed. Doha stated that it was a notice from a junior spirit mage. His face was still on the ground, but his eye remained on the rank 1. Doha captivated Jihan by saying that it wasn't a request. He grabbed the latter's face and smashed it tip down on the ground, and he also said that it was a command. He named Jihan a junior spirit summoner. The scene was watched by Siam, who was currently cornered where the stones were and somewhat mad because all the people ran into the rank 1, and then he cursed afterward. He remembered that the guild master of one of Korea's top 5 guilds was Dice, the only earth spirit summoner. In the world of the transcendent hero, an earth dragon was no other than Hyuntae. See who shouted at the rank 1 that he should get away from Jihan, and she pointed her florin to Doha, saying that he should stay still if she started to release the power of the baton. However, Doha ignored her, stated that she knew what was good for the latter, and asked Jihan if he wanted to be eliminated by the rank 1 hand. See who was annoyed and could not do anything but watch the movements of Doha. She then realized that Doha was serious all along. The latter's hand started to crawl and asked Doha the word he just uttered. The green light started to spread across the place, making Doha freeze for a second. Jihan, despite being captivated, asked back how rank 1 should be eliminated instead. He then released his power, the wind bomb, and sent Doha flying away from him. The rank 1, at first, was confused, and due to his fast reflexes, he managed to protect himself. However, he couldn't control his power due to the sudden attack from the ladder, which made him stop by the rocks. After standing up from the rocks he was smashed into, Doha thought he should have been slammed into the ground. He uses the rocks to keep himself from standing up and looking at someone. He is confused because the ladder is already in his standing form. The rank 1 realized that when he hit the ground, the latter summoned a spirit to nullify the damage. Doha fixes his glass and continues thinking about the latter hiding the spirit to create a counterattack, and he thinks that Jihan is an interesting guy. On the other hand, Jihan was experiencing difficulty breathing and gasping for air. The latter skill was still activated, and he was notified about the probability of dying since it fell on code red. If spirit magic is continuously used, the danger ranges to 95%. The latter knew because he squeezed out every remaining mana for the strike. Then gaze at the side of the rank 1 and wonder about the damage. He also asked himself if this was a top-tier hero, claiming he could not beat him. However, Doha regained his startle from the latter's attack, released his yellow aura, and ran near Jihan. As he approached the protagonist, he called the latter a junior and stated that they had exchanged blows and asked for the start of round 2. He wanted to know who went first. However, the magic crystals were shown, and luckily, he caught it, which made him more annoyed by the latter. He pinpointed the latter, and as he looked at him, both of his hands were up in the sky, and he stated that he would surrender. Doha was angrier at the moment because of the sudden surrender. The protagonist stated that the goal of rank 1 was the magic crystal, and he no longer intends to fight. Doha was mad and gritted his teeth. He then said the latter wouldn't violate Article 38, Section 9 of the Hero Law regarding surrender declarations. He was still annoyed because it was just getting interesting for him. He turned around, and he heard the sound of a helicopter coming into that place. He said that it was perfect timing because it was the association people were already there. The wind from the helicopter was too strong, and Sihu, on the other hand, was fascinated by the Hero Association helicopter. A girl from a helicopter wearing casual attire yells at Doha and asks him what he did because he was acting alone. Doha answered that he had finished everything, and at that moment, he started nagging as soon as they arrived. As the helicopter landed and when Doha was about to enter the helicopter, he said that they would postpone their fight for the next time. He asked the latter's name, and the protagonist stated that he was Yoon Jihan from the Cool Fun Guild. Doha was amused and just smiled as he repeated the name of the latter's guild. He recommended that the latter participate in the 4th grade promotion exam, and he will personally give the guild recommendation. Jihan was surprised and asked Doha for a reason for him to vouch for the latter. Doha answered that it was just because he wanted it and entered the helicopter. The helicopter flew away, and Doha asked the girl if she heard that right and submitted the recommendation. However, the girl returned to rank 1 and explained that the exam was in 2 days and how they could submit a recommendation at that moment. A woman was flustered and stated to be a guild that had not been properly verified. She was confused and uttered the name of the rank 1 as she saw the cuts on the arm of the hero. She couldn't believe that Hyuntae had been injured and started to think how that was possible. The rank hero was happy and seemingly enjoyed as he continuously uttered the word fun. In the office of a cool, fun guild, Saim knelt on the floor and apologized to Jihan and Sihu. The latter's eyes became dark, and they accepted the apology from Saim. He was also preparing to beat the guy from the disposal company. As he clenched his fist, Saim stopped the latter and said to wait for a moment and that they should listen to him. Saim went over their earlier conversation, and he asked them if they were taking the 4th grade exam. He said that the exam was the day after tomorrow, so they shouldn't start by getting the gear sorted out. The latter seemed interested in the guy from the disposal company and uttered the same about the gear sorted. Saim continued to explain that he could see the latter sword was the end of its durability. Other equipment was in the same condition, so if they took the exam in the 4th grade, they would fail miserably. He then suggests they go to a workshop, which he knows is for repairs. The guy from the disposal company placed his hand on his chest and said that after they had done all the things that he had mentioned, then they could beat him up or whatever they wanted afterward. Sihu and Jihan look at each other and proceed to order Saim to lead the way. A calm sunset appeared, and the road was quiet. They went inside, and Saim opened the door. The latter was confused because there was no one in the room. Sihu got mad and accused Saim if it was another one of his tricks. The guy from the disposal company was scared and just laughed while saying no way. As Saim assured them, an unknown voice asked who was at the place. It proceeded to say that the workshop was closed on that day. He then laughs and asks them what they need. A man appeared with a hammer on his shoulder, and it was the dwarf blacksmith. Dwarves were a race known for their top-tier blacksmithing skills. The weapons they forge are of great quality, making them highly sought after by the heroes. Sihu was thrilled and stated that she had never seen a dwarf before. However, Saim once again seems like had another plan, and he answers Sihu by saying that he does neither. When the guild master acknowledges Mongdang because he is impressed, could it be that a dwarf runs the workshop? As she turned on his back and opened her eyes, she realized that the guy from the disposal company was supposedly there. However, she realized that Saim was already gone. She asked where he went. However, the guy answered them and started to laugh about the dwarf, and it was just nonsense. He then stated that he was a human, a native Korean. The two of them were shocked and confused about the origin of the man. They called him a liar, and for Sihu, anyone could see him as a dwarf, while Jihan demanded the man to show his ID if it was truly so sure about his origin. The man was just laughing about the actions and called them fools. He showed his ID, and as Sihu and Jihan held his card, they both screamed because the man was just 27 years old. They also noticed that it was a real ID. As they whispered to one another, they questioned that photo of the man and accused him of identity theft. The man was looking at them. Sihu was annoyed because Saim tricked them again. The latter said that the guild master should call the police 222. However, a 27-year-old was surprised and looked at some things, and then he asked the latter if he could see them for a moment. The protagonist was also startled and asked if he heard it right, and he gave his sword. When the man held the sword and said that it was a rare scar, the green aura that surrounded the sword also appeared. The man asked the latter if he was the wind spirit summoner. Jihan was shocked and asked the man how he knew that. The man exclaimed that a top-tier blacksmith can tell a profession just by scars on a weapon. Unfortunately, his sword could not withstand the power of the spirit. The man turned his back to his weapons, asking the latter to wait momentarily because he had the perfect weapon for a spirit summoner. He continued to rummage his equipment until he found it. When the man found it, he offered it to Jihan, and it was a sword that embraced the spirit. It was known as the Namhoyal or Namhoyal sword. Jihan tried the sword and was surprised at the embrace that he made on the sword. When he explains it to Sihu, the woman finds it a lame name. So, the time passed quickly. On the day of the promotion exam, they entered the place where the exam was located. There were so many people inside the building, and Sihu said it. Jihan thought about the 4th grade exam because it had been a while. He observed the place and realized that there were many people during his Keroz days, too. As they turned their face to the side, he heard someone say, "Idiot." They gossiped about Jihan getting expelled from Keroz and showing up for the 4th grade exam, and they laughed. They continued by saying that if they were Jihan, they would be embarrassed to continue as heroes. Sihu asks Jihan if they are talking about the latter. The protagonist let it slide and said that people always gossip when they gather around. At least it was a relief because the incident in Bucheon doesn't seem to have spread. He also wanted to keep the fact that he was a spirit summoner hidden. Drawing attention won't do anything good. As they silenced, getting all excited over a merely portrayed exam. However, a man walked near the ladder and stated that the ladder was not special, and he was nothing more than a fool who couldn't even reach the middle tier. The man stated that the protagonist was unqualified. It was the 4th grade examiner named Bang Yoon-sik. Jihan activated his skill, calculated the probabilities, and cursed Yoon-doha. Yoon-sik asks him if it was a parachute. He realized that his exam pass rate was just 1%. He started questioning the words that Doha uttered in their fights. On the other hand, someone was calling Yoon-doha's name when the rank 1 was making his coffee. His secretary has already sent the recommendation for the class for promotion that he had mentioned last time. Doha couldn't believe it and asked if it was all ready. However, the woman found it strange because why did she have to choose Bang Yoon-sik as the examiner? Students were running and about to attack the man before the battlefield. However, the man stood there, refusing to scrutinize the examiner first and pointing the sword as soon as the battle started, which was a reckless strategy. Yoon-sik's eyes turned red, and his aura was filled with darkness. Despite the numerous attacks that he had received, he sent all the students flying away from where he stood and uttered that they were all dimwits. All the students were lying on the ground, some had lost consciousness. He stood firmly and announced that Team 12 had failed. 3 people watched from above, and 1 exclaimed about the Yoon-sik strategy. They also think that Yoon-sik is taking the exams too far. They didn't know whether someone would ever pass. Class 5 copycats were all like that, as stated by the class for examiner Kim Han-suk. The woman appeared stressed about what she should do, whether she should report to their higher, and said from the class 4 examiner named Oh Hyun. Another guy appeared and said that it was time for the last party. It was also from examiner 4 named Seo Youngwoo. They started looking at the profile, which was said to be a fun guild. They knew the 2 because the other guy said it must be them. The guys that are killed are the guys that the guild master recommended. The status system showed a guild affiliation to the Dice Guild and stated that Jihan and Sihu would suffer slightly. The 2 of them entered the class for examination. As Han-seok saw Jihan, he stated that he was a man with no flexibility. He corrected it by saying that it was supposedly for their party leader. Their Dice Guild party leader was Bang Yoon-sik. Someone in the room announced to welcome the class, for example, and gave instruction that for the next 5 minutes, they would be engaged in a battle with their examiner, and also added that the requirement for promotion was fulfilled the moment they either completely defeated the examiner or receive an acknowledgement from the examiner. Siho was annoyed because how do they expect a class 5 party to defeat the examiner? The latter was focused on observing their examiner and thought he must have fought those many parties, but he cleaned without a scratch. The protagonist requested that his guild master, Asher, support him from behind during the master's area. Sihu assured me that she got it. Jihan was determined and said it wouldn't be an easy fight, so he opened and released his sword. The announcer embarks that the class examination begins at that moment. As soon as the clash begins, the dice leader is already in front of them, and he kicks Jihan, which makes him start. He also thought the examiner was attacking him as soon as it started. Jihan threw away that made Sihu look for him. However, the examiner was already on her side and was about to throw a punch. Nevertheless, the green spirit appeared before them, making the examiner, Yoon-sik, stop his strong punch, being almost hit by his guild master. The examiner was confused at that moment and started scanning the hall, and as he found the letter, he realized that the recommendation letter was not fake after all. The latter uses his palm to control the spirit and block that attack. However, it didn't last longer than they thought because the examiner kicked Siho and quickly moved near Jihan. The latter's sword stopped his attack. However, he experienced how heavy it was to exert such power, even with the wooden sword. The protagonist could be seen having difficulties controlling the examiner. The latter thought that he needed to distance himself first and use his power known as Wind Knight, and he sent the examiner down the hallway from his side. The examiner realized that it was wind-type magic as he knocked down on the floor. He was annoyed because the letter was showing off an annoying talent. As he kept observing the latter, the protagonist initiated the attack using haste. However, Bang Yoon-sik felt his presence. Therefore, the examiner was already side-eyeing him before he could make a haste. Back in the office of Yoon-doha and his secretary, a woman asks the hero why he chose Yoon-sik as the examiner, and if he could give something like a recommendation letter. It would work against them. She seemed worried about Doha's decision and added that the cool fun guild would struggle. As he was drinking his coffee, Doha smiled and said that there was no one but Yoon-sik since he was a swordsman who cut the wind. At the same time, at the examiner's hall, Yoon-sik smiled in satisfaction and released his quick sword flow that made multiple cuts to the blade. Jihan was taken aback as he retreated to his place. The multiple cuts later appeared on the latter's body and made him fall on the floor. The examiner who made those cuts to him was standing there with his hands in his pockets. However, Jihan, as he crouched down, was also puking blood, and afterward, he cursed about his speed, saying that it wasn't as fast as before. He remembered the day he defeated the mutant Kakatress and went to Hyuntae. The latter doubted whether the aftermath from back then was still present. He thought that, moreover, since earlier, while he held tightly his sword that released more spirit power, then continued and said that the sword had been consuming a ridiculous amount of mana. However, Examiner Bang Yunchik asked the latter about the recommendation letter from Hyuntae and belittled his skills. He was unfazed when he was looking at the protagonist and said he should eliminate the protagonist right there. While Yunchik and Jihan were facing each other, the examiner stopped when Sihu was behind the examiner, yelling that he should get off on the ladder. She then opened her florin directly at Yunchik. It releases a blue power that made the examiner go far on Jihan. After the attack, she landed before the ladder and called her name. She was in front of the ladder and said that leaves everything to her from that point on. Sihu thought she could not always hide behind the protagonist forever. Therefore, she must do that. The examiner heard them talking and asked the guild master whether she would back away. Then she answered that she was not a fool, swayed her hair to disclose her ears, and stated that she was the fun guild master named Kim Sihu. Yunchik was thrilled and interrogated the woman as if she were an elf. By that, the fun guild master was already running and thought that for a mere magician daring to charge at her, a sword, that examiner easily deflected her attacks, and he said he expected her to be a fool. Sihu was still not done right after she launched her attack. She immediately called his inner elves to listen to the flow of mana. The power of mana was circulating all over the room, and she started her wind arrow attack directly at Yunchik. As for Yunchik, he easily managed to cut the woman off, uttered that it was just a foolish move, and belittled her, saying that Sihu thought those work at a close distance. He deflected it using his sword, which created reflection behind him. He expected and said that the woman prepared only for one strike of attack, but was confused afterward when it became more than one. As he kept deflecting the woman's attack, the whole became 5. The examiner was still shocked for 5 doing multiple casting and a 6-fold magic. As he kept counting, he realized it was 7. The 2 of them had cornered him by holding each foot. It was the slow wind power that was released from the florin. The examiner acknowledges that they got him, and right after, the 7-fold magic explodes directly on his position. The Fun Guild Master thoroughly examined the power she had released and thought they got him good with her magic, even if he was the examiner. However, despite being cornered by the 7-fold, there was still amusement when he said it wasn't bad. Closing the distance and trapping Yunchik in a square was a good move. Upon giving his amusement speech about the attack, he said it was too slow, and he cornered the woman and pointed his sword at Sihu's neck. The woman was shocked and thought about the examiner blocking a 7-fold magic. Due to her shock, her eyes widened and grew bigger. The examiner asked Jihan when he would be going to attack. After hearing his name, Jihan held his sword and became alert. The latter's sword was already releasing a green aura and said that Yunchik would lose because of its arrogance. He also stated that it was not the sword absorbing the mana, he was wasting it. He also said compressing the minimum mana to the maximum and cutting are necessary. By that, he was releasing a much darker green aura than usual. A few seconds later, he released the compressed power known as a wind blade. On the other hand, on the shelf full of trophies and such, a guy appeared and looked out the window. He heard a knock and said to come in. A yellow-haired guy showed up and was holding a paper. He then stated that it was Kim Hyuntae's status report for that day, and just hummed and nodded in response. Then, he asked if the name Kangwoo was adjusting well, and his secretary repeated the name he had uttered. An older man faced his secretary and explained that it was a guy that he had sent to join Kim Hyuntae's party after sending away the latter. The older man's name was Park Young-seob, the guild master of Kiro's guild. His secretary read the report and stated that evaluations indicated he was still adapting to change and appeared somewhat unstable. The old man was still firm in his decision and said that Hyuntae would stabilize it himself because the guy was much more useful than Jihan. The secretary became nervous right after he heard Jihan's name since there was something about the latter, too. He then continued by saying that Jihan had taken the class for a promotion exam. He was dazed after he heard the news and was smiling after he called names to the protagonist. He added that Jihan, who could not get a recommendation letter from anywhere, was taking the promotion exam. He laughed and could not believe what he heard. However, his secretary said that the latter received from Doha's recommendation letter. Then, the old man froze and his smile vanished. For Young-seob, it was still unbelievable, and the sword was wrecked on the floor. It shows that Jihan became the superior in the examiner's hall. The floor had wrecked lines, and the protagonist's sword pinpointed Yunchik. The latter looked at the examiner thoroughly while Yunchik was seen. He had a speck of dirt on his face as he crouched on the floor. The examiner triumphed and was thrilled since he wondered how he got Doha's recommendation. He then said that he would surrender, yet sending an elementalist was cheating. In the hallway, Sihu and Jihan were sitting on the couch and looked so exhausted from the clash that they had earlier. The latter uttered that he thought he could live now and was yawning. His fun guild master was lively and asked Jihan about who he was and how he adopted elemental magic so quickly because he showed a new technique in every episode. The latter answered that he didn't know either. He feels like he has gotten closer to elemental magic through the battle and looks at his hand. He then added that it could be that Doha intended this to happen. Afterward, he just praised his leader and said that she was also wonderful, and that they could win because the woman had drawn his attention. The woman just shrugged it off, got shy, and said it was nothing. They passed the battle examination somehow, but still had to take the interview. 4 heroes came out the door and assured them they worked hard. The 2 of them watched the hero who passed by. Right after, they heard their guild name that they would be next to enter the room. Inside the room, 3 people looked intently at the information they had passed before entering the battlefield. The woman said the previous party prepared a lot, and their bottle examination was also interesting, as the guy sitting in the middle stated. They were about to enter the room when they heard them talking. As the guy in the middle, he also said that if there were no other options, they would promote. He eventually stopped and changed his mind and said that no, they should eliminate them. Jihan and Sihu were shocked. Another man also said that the tanker hesitated too much, and at that rate, he would surely panic when the party members were attacked, as Lee Dongho stated from the Warriors Guild. He whined and fuzzed about it and crumpled the paper while saying that kind of party was a class for him, and he thought that it was ridiculous. They also heard that the guild had failed the promotion in the last, and they thought no one would be promoted. Yu Jihan, who heard everything, said they were talking as if telling students to listen to it. The next interview is to ask them to sit here, that is the cue for them to enter the room. Sihu greeted them as they were both already seated and introduced her guild. The man seated in the middle was scanning their information. He was startled because among all the parties participating at that time, they were the only ones who passed the battle examination. For him, it was shocking news. Yu Jihan smiled with his eyes and said they were fluttering, and he thought that they were just lucky. His guild master was shocked by Jihan's actions, and she thanked them. The man continued, saying the 2 were against the examiner, but he didn't think they needed an interview. Dongho seemed bored and just hummed in response. He pinpointed Sihu because he wanted to see the woman's ear. He also added that her hairstyle looked so stuffy, and she quickly fixed her hair. After he saw the woman's ear, Dongho was surrounded by a dark red aura and asked if she was a half. All the people inside were shocked by Dongho's action. He started to lick his lip and said that he thought the woman was a pure breed, which was a shame for him. A man in the middle yelled his name and said he should watch his word. He quickly exclaimed that he had done it out of habit without knowing, so he demanded that Jihan relax his face. Jihan was agitated when he heard those words and cursed Dongho. Sihu was holding his arms and was stopping the latter from getting into a fight with the interviewer. She also assured the protagonist that she was fine. The latter was mad and shrugged it off as he sat down. He also agreed that he should hold back. After they saw Jihan was calm, Dongho said they should continue the interview. The latter continued, saying he could not get caught up in such provocation. The female interviewer asked Sihu about his father, Kim Gunho, who belongs to a monster research institute in Kyoto. Sihu answered her by saying yes, she was correct. The woman interviewer also asks Jihan if they hunted a mutated mutant in the recent monster area. He also answered the woman by saying yes. The interviewer was thrilled about a new guild with a 2-member party at this rate. However, she was interrupted and stopped by Dongho, who went to ask Sihu because this was the first time he hadn't seen a half-elf form a guild in his 10 years of being a hero. So, by that, there was something he would like to ask. He then leaned his face on both hands and continued that if South Korea ever faces a group of invading elves, he asks who the woman will stand on. The woman was caught on guard and couldn't even utter a word to answer the questions. She was sweating a lot during that interview, and someone said he could not listen to them anymore, and Dongho got mad about what he heard. Jihan uttered that the Warriors Guild must educate their guild members this way. He seemed surprised by what he had heard, and Sihu, on the other hand, just mumbled the latter's name. He added that since then, they have not been interested in the promotion examination. Dongho kept attacking his guild master, and the old man got mad. He smashed the table and said that that was for him to decide. One of the interviewers interrupted them and said that the 2 of them should stop already. However, Jihan utters that they would rather have their guild humiliated. He would instead give up on the promotion. The room went into chaos, and Dong-ho cursed at the ladder and asked if the protagonist had come to the examiner's hall to fight that day. While someone was stopping them, Sihu was surprised when they heard the ladder's answer and couldn't do anything. She was about to cry because she knew that they were screwed. In the cool Fun Guild office, Sihu sat on the couch and sipped her coffee. The ladder apologized to her since they failed the test because of him. The woman let it slide and said that it was fine. She also added that, on the contrary, she was grateful that the ladder stood up for her. It was her first time to have someone get angry on her behalf. The protagonist mumbled her name and asked someone to say those things. He noticed the woman constantly clicking the keyboard and asked her why her finger kept licking the refresh button. The woman answered that she just wanted to see who passed the exam. The desktop showed that it was loading the list of successful applicants, and it would take a moment. Upon waiting, the latter kept apologizing to her guild master until the list showed up. They both looked intently at the screen. See who read out loud about the party that passed the class for promotion. They exchanged looks and were surprised. On the other hand, in the interview room, Dong-ho was playing with his apple while the two interviewers were just on his back. They asked the older man what he was thinking and if it would be alright. Dong-ho answered yes and apologized for causing a fuss earlier. He knew that he pushed them a bit too much and was a bit curious too. He uttered the Fun Guild, and he was somehow interested. He catches his apple and says how far the Fun Guild would grow. He thought them about an arrogant bastard as he bit his apple. Try climbing up all they want. Back to the office of the Fun Guild, as they intently look at the list. They couldn't believe what they read. At the same time, Dong-ho said he would destroy them on top. On the other hand, they saw their guild name on the list of those who had passed and still doubted what they had seen. That's all for today. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you wish to have another part of this recap, please give us at least 2,000 likes. Please don't forget to comment and subscribe to our channel for more content like this. Until next time.